Where do we start with you? I guess we could start right off the bat with Winter Songs because it's Grammy nominated. I want to know where it came from. Where did the album arise? Like, is this just inspiration? You just went, I'm throwing this sucker together. I really love all of these ideas, or this is years of compilation. This is grind work that got you to this point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, and I don't know if people are watching this, right, as well as
Yes.
hearing it. Okay, so I'm
Yes.
going to do something. I'm going to show them. So I'm at the Banff Center. I'm back at the Banff Center working on new music, but I want to show them my view.
Nice.
So I was in a different location when I wrote Winter Songs. I was in a cabin in the woods. But I had gone there, Stefan, to write a totally different project. I had brought all these books with me. It was going to be kind of poetry based, adapted poetry. I was working with this beautiful indigenous poet who ended up contributing a poem to the liner notes of Winter Songs. Her name is Hannah Gray McKay. She's from the Mishkigogomang Ojibwe Nation. So I had this idea. I get to the Banff Center. I've been given a glorious 2 weeks, longest residency I've ever been given on campus. And I go to my cabin in the woods. This is in late November, early December of 2021. And so it was very quiet on campus because, COVID was still a thing.
Yeah.
I know it's still a thing, but, in a different way. And
Yes.
so off I went to my studio, the Ian David studio, floor to ceiling glass windows, beautiful Steinway baby grand in the middle of the room, incredible acoustics. And the snow begins to fall. And I'm looking outside and I'm just saying to myself, okay, I am going to be writing something very different than I had intended. And out comes the first song, Drifting Down Ice, which is very much meant to sound like snow falling. And I just kept going. It was almost like I was downloading music from the cloud. That's how it felt for so much of that project. And I was writing from what I was seeing and experiencing right there in front of me. So it's very evocative music. It's really meant to capture a feeling, the feeling I had when I was in my cozy studio looking out on winter scenes or hiking and braving the elements, watching the trees bend and sway. And, so we can get into some individual songs, but that's how Winter Songs was begun. And then because it's a holiday, well, not really a holiday project, a seasonal project, every passing year, we kept missing the deadline to get it done for release. Because if you're going to release a holiday or a seasonal record, you got to have that thing done in like July.
Right.
And so every year, 2022, 2023, we couldn't get it done in time. But then what would happen, Stefan, is the music would continue to expand. So my husband and co-producer, Ben, and I went from hearing string quartet to hearing chamber orchestra. And then we heard harp. And so we just kept adding layers. And I
Mhm.
think that was the beautiful thing about it being such a long process, in terms of the production.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, so in essence, it started out from imagination, from the inspiration of what was in front of you. And then over time, because of the systemic delays, that
Yeah,
technical concepts
sure.
added to it. So the story gets more depth to it. So the original story was from the heart. It was this pure, raw, this is inspiration. And then slowly that inspiration gets colored with a bit more depth to it. And you get to throw layers on top. And you say, I also like this. I like the flavor of this. This makes it feel a bit more. And you layer that up. And it's no wonder that it is a Grammy nominated album because of the layers and the depths. When I listen to the pieces that I've listened to, I'm awestruck by some of the songs, like literally awestruck by some of them. And I mean, as a personal statement, I would love for you in a project to just have your voice with
Mm,
piano, very subtle background instrumentation,
yeah,
but all of it subdued just so that I can hear you with a
right.
bit of music behind because you have a quality to your voice that is unique. I talk to other artists and I say, do you want to have a one-hit wonder, like Take Five, or do you want to have like a career
Yeah.
where they recognize you immediately? You have a signature voice. The
Oh,
tone and quality of your voice is almost bell-like,
thank you.
pure, perfect. You don't have breath in the beginning. Some of your album you could hear, that some of the breathing and, the excitement and
Right.
the sort of adaptation of sound that you're training your voice to get out there. But
Yeah.
now the quality of your voice is pure. It's like you have honed it into a perfect instrument. You do something in Rocky Mountain Lullaby that I've only heard an instrument do, where you're at a specific registry singing a note, and then you bounce up an octave,
Oh.
and then you go from there. And I've only heard an instrument do that because, with keys on an instrument, and it's woodwind is what I'm referring to, the instrument that I heard, you can press two keys and you're up an octave. And that's it.
Right.
Your voice did it in a way that is perfect. Like there was no adjustment. My ear didn't hear any adjustment. It was like your voice was here and now it's here magically. It just went bounce.
Oh,
And
thank
that it
you.
gave me chills, literally, because as I say, I've heard an instrument do it, and I loved when instruments do that. It just resonates in your soul, and your voice did it. And I went, okay, that's it. This is a next level artist because it takes quality to do that kind of work. So I'm sorry I'm lauding on your skills, but it's magic. You have a magical voice. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I've had quite a journey with my voice because a couple years ago I was concussed and then I started having vocal issues several months later, connected to all the tension in the neck. And I'm still working that out. In fact, I was working it out even while we were recording Winter Songs. So it means a lot to me to hear you say that. And I have learned that a voice that is vulnerable is a voice that is human. So I'm trying to embrace the different facets, the different stages.
well, it sounds like you have taken yourself. If you go beyond this, if you actually find a way to move yourself out of the strata of skill that you're in right now and move up, I don't know. You'll have angels knocking on the door saying, "Excuse me, could you train us? Because this sound I've never heard before."
That's really sweet. Thank you.
I am flattered that you came on to do the interview because the level, the quality, I thought, okay, she's at the next level. She only wants like people that have 10 million people following and that sort of thing. So it inspires me that you have this skill set and you're so humble about it. That you say, "Oh, I'm still working on it. I'm still no, 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 it's not good yet. For me, it's not that good." So I have a
Well,
question about you in the skills that you have when you were doing, like you said, winter songs was something that started as an inspiration. So how do you start that process? So you are a songwriter, and I imagine you also work on some of the instrumentation as well. You hear the sounds, so you don't just write words, you're actually hearing it as you're moving through the process. But how do you get there? Where is that spot, that sweet spot in your process where you say, okay, this is where I am, I'm going to start? Or do it just comes to you in the shower, you wake up in the morning, you go, oh, I got a song, and you start working at it? Where does that come from?
yeah, it's a combination. So when I was in Banff, or when I am in Banff, much of it does appear at the piano. But what I have found is that the combination of getting out for hikes and stepping away from the music alongside, sitting at the piano has really worked well because a lot of ideas come to all of us, whether in music or in work or in parenting or in relationship, whatever sphere it may be, when we have to troubleshoot something or we're in need of new ideas, they often come to us when we're not actively trying to solve that issue and when we're more relaxed. So traveling or just sitting and meditating, looking out on nature, walking. For me, that's a big one, walking. And I love people, so I love to walk with people. But when I'm in Banff, I'm almost always walking on my own. And I've tried to make a habit of not always listening to music because if I allow my mind and my ears the space, then new ideas do come. And then I can capture them on my voice memo, or I can hope, trust, and pray that they'll remain with me until I'm back at the piano.
And
And that's what the process looks like. I really, my voice memos here on my phone, if I go back to that, I can scroll down to 2021 and, I promise you that and I'm seeing stuff from other albums. I'm seeing material from Out of Dust. It's all still here. And, here's the Wintersong stuff now. And sometimes I'll give them the songs generic names. Banff Vamp, I called one of them. Drifting Down Ice. This was November 25th, 2021. This was right when I had first arrived. You know, I don't know if you can listen.
Skating.
I called it Skating.
Oh,
So so that's just me sitting at the piano. It's faster than the record.
mhm.
And I'd totally forgotten that I'd called it Skating. So the first title that came to mind was Skating, and then I decided to give it something a little bit more poetic, Drifting Down Ice.
Hmm.
But
No, it's really just that little
yeah,
piece, hearing that the piano and then your voice comes in and thinking, and that's not the way it is on the album. And you kind of think, oh, why don't you put a compilation together of creative process as opposed to, the finished product so that you
right.
can people hear that kind of adaptation that moves into something else, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
they hear that first, that original seed or germ or whatever you want to call it, and
yeah.
before it begins to open up, and that is as sort of, you know, foundational as it gets right there. That was the very first thing that came to me. I would have just written it when I recorded that voice memo.
Yeah, and so here our audience just got to hear the raw
That's it.
raw
Yes,
Laila
yes.
on her phone as she was creating. That's phenomenal. It's absolutely
Yeah,
phenomenal. I mean, most of the people that I talk with, I hear the after effects, right? That I went through
right.
weeks and weeks of processing, and here's what I made. But to hear it raw, to hear it, this is what my brain was doing at the time. Bang, and wow, I mean, that could go on the album as a second, the intro, like you did. You do a preamble to one of your songs,
Yeah.
instrumental, and you could do a preamble to one of your songs as, here's what I started with, and here's what it became.
Well, yeah, and I think people are interested more and more in the reality of how this all takes shape. I think that's why, and maybe it's a crude comparison, but I think that's why reality TV and reality shows have become so popular, is because people are just sort of fascinated with what actually happens. Although in that case, they're put in pretty sensational or ridiculous scenarios very
Yeah,
often. There's like
and
a
it's
gimmick.
scripted.
Some of it is probably scripted. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'm a little naive, but I do think that also online, like musicians used to spend tens of thousands, some of them hundreds of thousands if they had the money and were with a major label, on these super slick, directed videos. And I would do, my budget was never that, but maybe 10 grand with a
Mhm.
supportive factor on an official music video. And they were fun, and it's still fun to watch those. But what we found that is on social media platforms, especially shorter forms, TikTok, etc., people are really more interested in just seeing an artist in their natural habitat. So, I think of one of my co-nominees at the Grammys, Leve. She became as famous as she is because she's a Gen Z person, and she, fresh out of college, or even while she was still in college, would just film herself with a ukulele singing into the camera. No auto tune, no
Mhm.
production, just a lovely woman sitting there with her ukulele, very honestly singing to you and talking. And so people felt like they were in her living room with her, and they began to feel that she was their friend. And that familiarity, that vulnerability, that direct access, I think is what really built her up as an artist.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
people like to feel the connection. Some people like sitting back, back from the stage, and they're watching something at a distance. But a lot of people, especially with music, like to feel as though they're engaged in a conversation with the artist, right?
Absolutely.
They're playing a role in that development, that creation, which is their emotional impact on the artist's production of whatever piece they're doing. So somebody who's doing it on TikTok or wherever potentially is experiencing from watching the little light bubbles pop up or whatever, that they're going, oh, people like this. I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to do a bit more. I'm going to, get engaged. And it does feel more like a conversation.
Absolutely. I would say the toughest thing about the pandemic and performing, over Zoom or what have you, like when you're performing, depending on your setup, you couldn't necessarily watch those comments and emojis as they were popping up. Once, in an interview or in a setting where you could see them, it was so lovely. But there's nothing like being in a room with people, getting that instantaneous feedback. And
Yeah.
they do, you're absolutely right. They become a member of the band. So whatever happens that night, whether it's Madison Square Gardens or the Jazz Bistro in Toronto or the National Arts Center in Ottawa or wherever, a church, someone's home, whatever happens in that particular room or space with that musician and those people is unique to that moment. And it has to do with, it's multifactorial. It's the venue, it's of course, whatever the musician has eaten that day, how they feel, but also what the audience, what the listeners, the participants are feeding back.
That's
Because
right.
that it's cyclical. It's not like one direction, right? It's not the artist just spraying out music to their listeners. It's cyclical. It's going round. It's spinning around and around and around.
Yeah,
It's a circuit.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's a closed
So
circuit. Yeah.
to that end, which do you prefer? So you work in the studio, you produce your albums, you produce your songs, but you also do a lot of stage work. I've seen the live.
hmm
Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the quiet, calm construction of the studio? Do you love the engagement of the audience with you, that conversation, that sitting at the table kind of mode where you're playing for them and you're singing for them and you're hearing their reaction? Which one works for you more?
Live. Mhm. Yeah,
And do
definitely.
you get nerves? Are you
Yes.
nervous before a performance? And
Oh,
what do
yeah.
you do? So I know a lot of people that listen, they hear, they want to know, all right, I'm going to have to go talk at a meeting or something, and I feel nervous right now. How do I deal with it? So for you, before going on stage, what's the process? What is the pre performance, the on stage, and the walk off for you in terms of your internal processes?
There are a few things. That's a great question. No one has asked me about that before. And I would say, number one, prayer is a big component for me. I know not everybody can relate to that, but for me, there's something very spiritual about the process of making and sharing music. And I have always felt that A, it's a privilege, it's a responsibility, it's also a wonderful gift. And for me, music takes life when you're sharing it with other minds, hearts, spirits, people who are going through all kinds of things in their own lives. So I always pray that no matter how I'm feeling in my voice, in my body, that people would experience what is care, that they would feel that they're there and they matter and that they're cared for. And what's beautiful about that is I'm a believer that even if I come in limping, and there have been entire tours where I've limped through because of the vocal challenge. Last year when we released Wintersongs, I got a cortisone injection, my first, 3 days before we started our tour. And I had literally no voice, day 2, day 3, and I thought, what, this is crazy. And what I learned that tour, which sort of addresses your question, is that actually these performances are not about me. And that was incredibly humble. I would get on stage and have 50%, and I would feel like I was disappointing people. And my pride, if I let my pride get in there, oh boy, then I was in trouble. But I realized through that experience that it was always, only ever, and always about connection. And that connection could happen through the stories told between the songs, through all the other players. There are so many different facets involved. And if I would just come to the stage willing to be a bit of a vessel, a portal, then, it was always successful, meaning people were always moved, even when I felt like I had disappointed because my voice wasn't what it should be. And that was such a lesson. And so I also had to teach myself to breathe. I'm not a trained singer. And so when you get nervous, I mean, one of the first things that happens is the voice will shake. And I also have asthma. So having to breathe deeply before singing a phrase, it was such a conscious thing. And so breath, staying connected to the breath is critical for managing nerves and accessing, just a certain state of mind and being that I think facilitates something that goes beyond our humanity. And and then of course really paying attention to the audience. And that can be hard. There's been the odd show where we just weren't getting anything back. And I even had a show recently where we were doing, I thought, a great job. Like, my voice was strong, the band was cooking, but for whatever reason, the audience just didn't seem that engaged and they weren't really responding. So at that point, I just again had to really set aside my ego. You just don't want the judging brain to start entering the picture when you're performing or recording, leave that for the editing room, right? And you can't be self-editing necessarily during performances. I think it would take a show quickly out of the emotional power of it, right? It would take it away from the emotional content. And so, in that moment, at that particular show, I had to focus on my band a little more than I did the audience, because there came a point where I was like, okay, I'm not getting this connection, so now I'm going to do the jazz thing, and I'm going to really lean into what's happening with the band. And we're going to generate our own energy and send it out, because that's still our responsibility.
Yeah.
But listen, one last statement. I have sung and played with Sting at a private event in New York City where only the first row could see him because it was a room in a lovely building, but it wasn't set up for performances. So we brought in all our gear, and it wasn't staggered seating. So it was just a front row of people who could see us. Everyone behind them couldn't. And within a minute of Sting singing one of his big hits, I can't remember if it was Message in a Bottle or whatever, like it was something incredible. There he is, the man, the legend. People started talking. They just turned around and started talking. And I was like, this is happening to Sting? And it was such a lesson because, part of me wanted to stop the music, stand up and say, what are you people thinking? But he just carried on. And I think he understood that it was in large part because the majority of people there couldn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
So, so they just kind of, maybe it was awkward and they did what they did. But he kept going and he gave 150% because he's a professional. So that was a very long-winded response.
Not at all. And to sort of give a rebuttal to the audience that wasn't responding, much in the same way that when you're at a dinner table and the food is phenomenal, no one speaks because they're enjoying the food. They are completely enwrapped in what they're eating, as opposed to, let's have a conversation. Let's respond to what I mean. No, the response is yum, 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 yum.
Yeah.
It's very possible that your audience was enraptured with the songs, with the music, to the point where there was no response they could give that was adequate.
Well, it's very hard to know. And I've learned that it's different in different countries. So for example, in Japan, they were so quiet. And then at the very end, they clapped quietly, but longer than I've ever experienced in my career. And that was their way of expressing appreciation. It was just culturally different.
Exactly. I know some people that I've interviewed in different countries, and they experience very similar things where there's no audience participation. They are silent to listen to every aspect of what it is that you're doing. And then at the end, that's when they show their appreciation. They don't do it during, because that's rude. You're up there presenting something to them. They are not allowed to participate. So it's very possible that was what was going on in that instance when you were on stage. You never know. I mean, you can't. Some people I've talked to, the context of the external, you can't know. You don't understand what their context is, why they're not participating, why they're not doing what they're doing. The only context you have is yours. And as you said, if you shut off the ego, shut off the judgment, and simply do the things that you do so phenomenally well, What happens at the end, whether they appreciate it or not, is where you'll find out. The rest of it is nothing to do with you. It has to do with the fact that you're performing and you'll perform. And the fact that you go through all of these steps to get yourself there and you have these conversations in your head about, I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to keep going. Keep going. I mean, it's like you've got, that would be a sitcom that you could have, you
Oh
know,
yeah. It's like being George
Lila on
Costanza.
stage. Yeah, that you've got somebody standing there talking. It's your voice talking to you while you're playing, and you're going, stop, leave me alone. I don't need the judgment. Go away. I've got the
Yeah.
performance. I got the emotions, and then you've got your emotional self going, sing, Lila,
Right.
sing.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I love it. I love it.
But from that perspective, I mean, you have an emotional side to yourself, you have a mechanical side to yourself. You've got that controlling interest. When I watch you play the piano, just playing the piano, you are focused. You are serious. I have watched you play and you play as though you're a concert pianist. You occasionally will look up at the music, but I have never watched you read the music. You'll look up and go, I'm there. Okay. And then you play. And you play, you don't look at your fingers. You're playing, but you are serious as though you are going through the notes in your head, you're going through the process of where your fingers are going to have to be, but you're not looking at them while you're doing it. And then you sing. And the transition between the concert pianist, the trained concert pianist to the emotional singer is so night and day. It's not funny because you are serious playing, and then all of a sudden this smile splits across your face, and the voice comes out, and it's like, oh, there's the sunshine. I was waiting for that to come. And then you're just lost. Your eyes shut, you're singing, and you don't look at the music anymore, and you're playing and you're singing, and this just smile. Every song I've seen you sing, you smile. I've never seen you singing a song when you're seriously singing as though you're thinking, what's the next word? What's the next line? Who am I singing with? You just beam. So what's the difference? Where is piano structured, so structured that there's no, I'm not going to say no joy in it. There's obviously joy in it, but singing for you seems to be this emotional transcendence that takes you away from everything and you're just lost in music.
Interesting. Well, I've never been aware of that. I'll say that if I'm playing an instrumental song, and there are a few, in almost every set, there's one that I'll just do on the piano and I won't sing. I think at that point you'll see me break through to real childlike joy, depending on what's happening with the band. But I would say that maybe when you're singing, your face is resonating and it's like, it's all here, right? Whereas piano, it has a longer way to travel to hit my ear. And so there might be more of a like, okay, I'm digging in, my fingers have to do what they have to do. And maybe it's because I'm trained as a pianist. I'm not really trained as a singer. I've taken a smattering of lessons and I hope to take more. But maybe what you're seeing is little Lila playing like often something kind of elaborate. Okay, here's what I got. Like, I got to do it. I got to do the thing. And then the singing, maybe because it's in the body, there's more of a feeling of like, okay, now my body's the instrument. Out it comes and it's sunshine. I don't know, because I'm fundamentally a very positive person. I'm very emotional, and I'm tempestuous, and I've struggled with depression and anxiety, and I can be explosive. Just ask my husband. But but I think, the core emotion that drives me in my life and on stage is one of joy.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was at an Oscar Peterson tribute concert, I got to participate in a couple, but I also got to watch a couple. Oh my gosh, his wife, Kelly Peterson, came on stage and talked about him, and what a genius he is. He's just unbelievable. But she said at the end of the day, he was all about joy. And I loved that because that really linked me to him, because I could never dare to play the way he played, but to understand that there was a simpatico of joy is really lovely to me. So maybe that's what you're seeing when I sing, is the joy.
I think, to be honest, and while you were describing playing piano and then what you were describing about yourself singing, if you were to watch this part of the video, the interview, and watch yourself playing and then singing, it almost looked identical. I have the images in my head playing. When you
to
were
the
talking,
videos.
when you were talking about playing, that's how you play. That's the look on your face, the same look, the look in your eyes, everything. It looked just like that. And then you talked about singing and this, and then the smile. And I went, that's exactly the same thing. That's the perfect transition. So what goes on in your head, ladies and gentlemen? It's this. It is exactly this. Um, so getting to the piano playing, and you said that you're classically trained and you started out. What I'd like to know, where did music start for you? The seed, the very initial things of music, where in your body you went, I really like this stuff. I want to get involved. It had to be before piano because piano is a commitment, unless it was something thrown at you. So where?
It was piano.
Really?
Yep, my mom tells the story. I have no recollection of this, but I was born in 1980, and in the 80s, parents wouldn't put their child in all kinds of extracurriculars the way that we do today.
Hmm.
Often you had to choose one activity. And so the way the story goes, I was very, very active and bouncy. And so she was thinking of putting me in gymnastics. I'm the youngest of four girls, and at least a couple of my older sisters had done gymnastics. And so she was thinking of putting me into tumbling and gymnastics. I was like 3.5. And then we had a piano in the family. And she tells me that one day, on my own, I climbed up onto the piano bench and I started plunking out the melody to Sesame Street by ear. I hadn't been taught a lick of piano, but I went and I figured it out. And she went, okay, she's a musician. So instead of putting me in gymnastics, I mean, I did a little bit here and there,
Mhm.
but she ended up putting me in music lessons. And for me, my piano teacher, who's no longer with us, her name was Juanita Ryan, and she was initially in North Vancouver and then ultimately in West Vancouver. I can still picture both her houses and the commute to her house. And when I was little, I would go to Mrs. Ryan's house and we would use the Leela Fletcher method, which was a lot of like arts and crafts, like cutting and pasting keys and notes and, learning about music in a way that was tactile, but not necessarily musical initially. And I would have to walk through this room or past this room with all these porcelain dolls. It was the most incredible porcelain doll collection I'd ever seen in my life. So that was a big draw. But then once we got to the music, it wasn't long before she was sending me home with cassette tapes initially and then CDs of the most exquisite concert pianists. And so I was like, I don't know, a kid still, not even a teenager. And I remember calling up friends on the analog telephone, and I would hold the receiver to like a Rachmaninoff concerto. And I would say to my friend, listen to this. And my mom would just be laughing in the background, like, your friend is not going to care. Is there even someone still there? But to me, music was like, it was a language, it was a feeling, it was a world of magic, right? It would make me soar when I listened. And I would listen, I had a cassette player right beside my bed, and I would play cassette tapes. Chopin was a favorite. And I would listen to these elaborate Chopin compositions, and I would just fantasize about myself being able to play those songs for an audience and give them the feeling that that music was giving me, right? It was like, oh my gosh, we need to shout this from the rooftops. Everybody needs to know about this, you know? Yeah.
So are you still doing classical piano on your own? Do you play it at all? Have you
No.
put that aside as a dream to play, let's say, Rachmaninoff's The Rack? Have you said, no, I'm not going to go after that. I'd rather keep my sanity than to play something like that.
Oh, well, I did all of that when I was young. So I was already like ARCT level when I was 12. So for people who don't know ARCT, that's like the grade 11, 12 level of the Royal Conservatory of Music.
Right.
Um, and so I moved, I progressed quickly as a budding pianist and wanted to go to Juilliard or Curtis, but I injured my arm when I was 15 in a car accident. And that was it. That was it. That was unfortunately kind of my breakup with classical music. Now, these days, I still revel in listening, but I think there's a bittersweetness to it because classical was my first love. Mhm.
So what changed you to jazz? I mean, was it the car accident that changed you to jazz, or
It
was
was
there something else?
it was Mr. Rebliati, Bob Rebliati. I went to Handsworth Secondary School. I was the only one in my family to go there instead of to a school named Carson. And I don't even know what was the driving impetus. Something made me ask to go there instead. And we even moved. So off I went to Handsworth, and then I met Bob Rebliati, who'd worked with Rini Rosnes, an exceptional Canadian pianist. She'd been at that high school a couple decades before me, and he saw in me, this was pre-accident, but he recognized in me that I had a good ear. And so initially he put me in the percussion section of the big band, which was super weird. I was playing vibraphone and shaker and, you know, but then he was feeding me all these jazz CDs like Herbie Hancock and Rini Rosnes, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea. And I started to and Oscar Peterson, of course.
Of
And I'm
course.
hearing these CDs and I'm going, ooh, this is kind of delicious, you know. But it really wasn't until I injured my arm and then I was playing mostly with my left hand. And that was when I became open to jazz as something that maybe I could dig a little deeper into. But I found it really hard because as a classically trained pianist, I wasn't used to improvising. And improvising to me was really scary and really vulnerable, you know?
Yes.
So it took some time for me to become comfortable with that. In fact, it really wasn't until I was in college that I began to feel comfortable with improvising. Um, and I had to discover composition and arranging first. That was where I really found my voice.
So with the comfort, so there is a question that I have to ask about being a perfectionist, or are
Yeah.
you a free spirit? And by the sounds of things, you have a mechanical brain of perfection. It's got to have a certain flow, a certain feel, a certain aspect. But then I can also see in your eyes there's this little imp that goes, you know what? No, no, I just want to do this. I want to do, and then the perfectionist goes, no, but it's got to be right. So
Yeah.
how do the
Yeah.
voices play in your head?
Well, I was a perfectionist, and what I realized was that was holding me back. And there was a drummer named Jim Blackley, who's no longer with us, but he knew Elvin Jones, and he would host jam sessions at his house. He was up in Barrie, an hour north of Toronto.
Mhm.
And we students would pile into a car and drive up there, and he would, play with us. And if there was a drummer in the band, because Jim played the drums, then the drummer would sit down and Jim would walk around the room. And I remember at one point I was sitting at the piano and he came up behind me and he started pushing me. And he was like, play the piano with your arms. He's like, just bang the piano with your arms. He was trying to get me out of my head. He could see that I was so in my head, judging every note. And so these days I would say I'm more a free spirit, especially on stage, where, and my son loves to point it out. He's, Mom, you're making mistakes, he'll say. I'll come off stage, Mom, I heard so many mistakes. And I'm like, Josh, you don't understand. It's about the moment. And Dizzy Gillespie famously said, the mistakes are where the brilliance begins, right?
Right, that's
So,
inspiration. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So now I'm much more free.
And you don't, so do you catalog those? Like when you're playing, do you hear it and go, yeah, I like that. I like that. Do you do that? Or do you just simply let it go? And then at the end, if you get a recording, you can listen to it and say, oh, I actually like the way that played out.
I just sort of let it fall away. It's in the moment. I leave it on the floor, whatever the expression is, right? Just and I'm trying to think if there was an occasion where it actually spurred something. Probably only when the brilliant George Kohler, my bassist, who loves those spaces, like he really he is probably the most free of spirits I've ever met. And so he would be the one, if there was a mistake, to leap on it and see it as an opportunity and turn it into something unexpected and start a whole new thread, a new path, almost like you veered off the road. GPS says, uh-oh, you know, you want to get
Recalibrating.
yourself back. And instead, George is like, no, no, we're changing the destination. We're now going somewhere completely new. That's how he is. It's wonderful.
Well, I've seen bands that play that way, that they do not rely on the dictum of this is what we're doing. They
Yeah.
more sort of play off one another. If they start to wander, the other person will take control and start driving in a different direction. And if they like the direction, they all start following. If they don't, somebody else will kick in and twist, the laneway so that, oh, now we're in this direction. Nobody fights. It's very much an uncontrolled control where it's sort of, yeah, let's just flow. Let's go. The river bends in all different directions. Let's just flow with it. And it sounds like your bassist has that instinct of, I heard something that I really like. Let's run with it and see where we can take it, as opposed to, let me just play over that and we'll get back on track.
100% he does. And he's comfortable enough with me and my husband, Ben, who plays drums, to even throw things in. Like he'll actually at some point, if we're getting too set in how we're doing things, it's jazz. And he's like, oh, I'm going to just change things up here. I'm just going to throw this thing in there that they won't have expected. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it absolutely delights us. And what it does is it captures our attention and reminds us that we are meant to be in the moment, that jazz is a music that is in the moment, probably more than almost any other genre out there, other than like free music, right? So yeah.
But I wouldn't say that I'd put you into a box of jazz,
No,
because
definitely
going
not.
through your discography, you can't really be quantified. I would not be able to say that, oh, this is Lila. This is what she is. She's one of these singers. She's one of these players. No, I would say you're a fusion player. I think that's the best word to use, that you're
Uh,
a fusion player, because you have contemporary jazz, you have a bit of modern jazz thrown in there, you have contemporary music in itself in your discography, you have some funk in there. There's a couple of pieces on out of
Out of
dust.
dust. Yes.
That's very much funky. I mean, I'd throw in a bit of Parliament, and all of a sudden you'd have
Oh, sure. I
so.
love Parliament.
But I mean, that's why I don't think anybody could actually quantify you as being one genre. And your latest, the Winter Songs,
Right.
there is nothing in that album that is a single. This is what it is. Nobody could listen to that and say, this is what it is. I mean, if you think of, oh, and I've lost his name, George, Winter into
Benson?
Spring.
No,
Yeah, no, George,
no. Winter to spring? Did you
Winter
say?
into Spring. Yeah,
Winter into spring. George Winston.
there you go.
I don't
His,
know George Winston.
oh, you have to listen to the music. It is piano. You'll love it. You'll probably
Okay.
start borrowing from it. Um,
Yeah.
but that music, you can sort of hear it change because it's seasonal, right? It's winter into
Yeah.
spring. So you listen to the music and it has this feeling of change from one thing to the other. Your album does not do that. It is just this lovely smattering of different emotional expressions. And it doesn't matter what, there isn't a genre that you can associate with it, because as you pointed out earlier, music is an emotional expression. It's a spiritual journey. It is an expression of the heart and the soul. That's a good enough explanation for music without having to put labels on it.
Right.
And your album is that. It is not a labeled, capable album. It is an expression. I would call it that.
Yeah.
There's the new Grammy area is called expression, and they give it an
Well,
album of expression.
well, it's interesting. I'm glad that you're touching on all of this because, as some people may have heard by now if they follow me, but many of these your viewers and listeners will be new to me, or I'll be new to them rather. I entered Winter Songs into jazz because I didn't know where else to put it. I put it in alternative jazz. And
Mhm.
then the Academy, the Recording Academy contacted me right before voting opened and they said they changed the category. They moved me into traditional pop. And the thing about traditional pop is it's a category that throws its arms wide
Yeah.
and says, we're going to embrace Barbra Streisand. We're going to embrace Elton John, which is an album that like rocks, you
Mhm.
know.
Yep.
We're going to embrace Leve, who's like mid-century modern jazz pop. We're going to embrace music theater. Like Lea Salonga had a record in there, she was once the darling of the music theater world. She was in Miss Saigon. That's how I came to know her music. Christina Aguilera was in there. Christina Aguilera is like a sort of R&B pop princess. What's she doing? But depending on how the album sounds, if there's something maybe a little more expansive or grand, like the strings, I would say that one of the elements I'm hearing in a lot of the records that made it into the traditional pop category is that there's strings or big band. So
Yeah.
there are larger ensembles. But then there's a pop feeling to the music. So it's not just the jazz tradition where you've got lots of improvisation and swing feel and all that. It sort of reaches into other genres as well and maybe defies category, right?
Yeah.
So then we end up in traditional pop, which is so interesting, and it makes sense to me, even though I'm so humbled to be alongside these superstars. It makes sense that they moved me there, just based on everything you said,
Yeah,
about.
but to say that you're humbled, I mean, I'm sorry, you fit the category. You fit the people that are there.
Oh,
Everybody named in that grouping, I would say, yeah, you belong there. I was
oh,
going to say, and I didn't want it to sound in the wrong vein, but there is a quality to your voice in some of the songs that you sing. I hear a Barbara Streisand in there.
oh,
So
thank you,
it's
Babs, the queen. Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm sorry, anybody listening to your music, they will hear it. Now that I mean, I say it, some people don't know Barbara Streisand's music. And if they listen to it and they listen to you, they go, oh yeah, I do. I hear the comparison. I hear that. I can
Right.
hear that piece to it. But if they listen to Wintersongs, they'll also hear a quality to your voice that transcends that.
Yes.
They didn't get that far with their own voices. They have their quality. You can hear Barbara Streisand, it's Barbara Streisand. You hear Laila, and it's you.
Uh,
So you've got yourself in a category of music now that I don't think, I mean, there's a lot of artists that would want to be there. And I've asked them questions. I've said, do you want that one hit? Do you want Take Five? Or do you want
right.
to be known for everything? Everything that you do comes on the radio and they know it's you. And some people say they want a little of both because Take Five is universal. Anybody hears it, they
Right.
immediately know. They may not know the name, they may not know the
But
band,
they've
but they
heard it.
know the song and they go, yeah, I know that. And to have a song like that, you walk anywhere and you go, you remember me? I did this. And you sing three notes and they go, oh, you're her. Oh my God.
Ah,
But you are the person that walks in, you sing three notes and it doesn't matter three notes of anything. You could be singing three notes of chopsticks and they'd go, that's Laila. That's Laila Biali. That's who that is. I know that
oh,
voice. So, you have that quality.
thank
Um,
you.
so this is a core question. This is one of these basic ones, but
Yes.
it helps the audience get more information, not just from you, but things that can help them if they want to progress.
Yes.
And that is number one, it's two-part. What is the best advice you have ever received that moved you forward in your life? Part one.
Oh,
Yeah. Part two, what is the best advice you would give your younger self to move forward in that life, given the experience that you've had today? Like where you are right now, look back 20 years at yourself and say, this is what I want to tell you. You missed out on this. This will help you. This is the thing that you should have known way back then that I had to learn through experience and through, hard knocks and all of those things. So that's the two part. The first one is your best advice. The second is what would you tell yourself?
mm. Well, interestingly, the advice that really struck me is advice that maybe wouldn't strike someone else unless they share the same faith or worldview.
Hmm.
This idea of there being a creator or some sort of divine power out there that is also fundamentally benevolent, even though there's so much darkness in the world. And so I think even though we've talked so much about connection and the audience and community, because I can also be daunted by the judgment of others, which includes community, other humans, and people can be really cruel or, unkind. The best advice for me was like audience of one. In other words, when you're making music, think first of the source, the great source that you believe that music has come from, and offer it back, you know. And so there's a bit of a spirit of worship in, I would say, in what I do, especially musically speaking, and that has freed me up from worrying about human judgment. Does that make sense? And I know that's going to sound, some people are going to be like, whoa. Like, there are not a lot of interviews where I would be that honest, because it in this world it takes courage, I think, to say, you know what, I believe. But I do, and it's the driving force of who I am. So that advice came from someone else who is definitely a person of faith, and said, look, focus on God when you're playing and when you're creating. So for me, that has gotten me through thick and thin, especially as I've gotten older. But as to what I would say to younger Laila, which might align with what I would say to any young person today approaching me and asking, what should I do? I think it would be twofold. And I would say, what you so generously said to me earlier in the interview, the snowflake idea, this fingerprint idea, the idea that we are each completely our own, set of vibrating cells and molecules and spirit, and no one is like anyone else, and you need to lean into your uniqueness as an artistic voice. Don't compare yourself to other people. Yes, you can learn and emulate and be inspired, as I am, as we all are. There's nothing new under the sun, as they say, but at the same time, really lean into your own uniqueness and don't allow anyone to steer you or pull you away from that. Not the star maker machinery, not the trends. Like, yes, pay attention, be smart, be savvy, but the world will respond to, and most needs, the best version of who you are. Not who someone else says you should be, or someone else that you look up to that you want to be like. Be you, and figure out what that is. And it's not just in music, but it's in everything that you do. And there will be, a wonderful interconnectedness between who you are in your life, in your relationships, and as a musician. I see those things as inextricably intertwined. But then the other thing I would say is, you know what? It's hard out there. It's really hard out there. And so you must cling to that little voice, that pilot light that must never be quenched or stamped out or snuffed out. You got to keep that burning. And if that means stepping away sometimes, or if that means dreaming big when everyone else is saying, no way, that's ridiculous. I got laughed at when I told one of my first real boyfriend, well, no, he was sort of one of the more serious relationships I had when I was in college, or just out of college. And I told him I was dreaming of working with Sting. He just laughed and basically said, dream on. But I had to protect what in my spirit was a dream, however far-fetched. And so we need to face the elements the way we do the storm, right? But we also need to sometimes shield ourselves, and sometimes we need to step away and take shelter and go to places that nurture us and find rest. And so, yeah. Guard the force. Guard the force.
What I like about what you said, and to sort of synopsize it, is that you have to respect yourself. You have to listen to your own voice. You have to respect the gift, because that's what it is. If you have a talent, you have a skill, you have a gift, nurture it. Water the flower, keep it going, even if everybody else is ignoring the flower, not looking at it, oh, I don't care, plants, who cares about plants? If you do, and you're honest, and you're authentic to yourself, that gift shines. You shine, because you are authentic, you are honest, your voice is true, it is not fabricated, it is not pushed, it flows. It flows from spirit and soul. So that's the reason why you have the impact that you do, because there's nothing false behind it. There's honesty behind it, and people feel that. When you are honest and you're authentic, people respond to that. When you are fake and you are pushing an agenda or somebody else is pushing an agenda through you, it doesn't sound right. And people go, yeah, it sounds like everything else, and I don't care. The people, the haters, if you want to call it that, the people that are negative, they're negative because they haven't yet found in themselves something that they can respond positively to. So they impact others just to make them feel the way they do. So never look at that in terms of that's something that's being said to me. That's something that's being expressed by someone else. It's never
Absolutely.
something directed at you. It's not about you. It's about their context and what they're going through. And you have to respect the fact that they're allowed to have that, but it doesn't have an impact on you because you know who you are.
That's exactly right. And it takes being pushed around a little bit, kicked down, pulled back up to really find one's center, right? It's those destabilizing moments that force you to really lean into who you are.
Mhm.
And like I've had many, and I've heard from other musicians who I look up to, Sting too, to mention him again, because for me, he's sort of the pinnacle of artistry. And, I watched him weather some uncomfortable things, including that gig I mentioned to you, but also an interview where he was really like, where he came under fire and under criticism that he never saw coming. And it
Yeah.
was someone he really looked up to as a great mind and intellect and a thoughtful voice. And this person kind of cut him down and was calling him out on some of the charitable work he'd been doing, Rainforest Foundation, was kind of rolling his eyes and going like, oh, brother, like, is that all just to make yourself look a certain way to the public? Meanwhile, Sting genuinely cares about those things.
Mhm.
And so it really hurt when that person questioned the authenticity of his values, really.
Yeah, and the thing is, it
So,
shouldn't have. It really shouldn't have because he was
right.
honest to himself, and the words that are coming out of that individual's mouth are coming from a place that is unauthentic, right? It could have been an agenda that was pushed on him to say, ask these things, be provocative.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Steve wouldn't know that, right?
Right.
So the thing is,
Right.
he should simply say, look, I know who I am, and I know why I do what I do. This doesn't bother me because you don't know any of this. You're asking questions that really don't value an answer. So, you know,
And not everything has to be for everyone, and
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
I mean, thank God we live in such a rich and diverse place, but we need to be okay with our differences.
Hmm.
And that's the problem, right? Whether we're talking about music or, you know, bound the boundaries of countries and places and people. Like, not to go there because there's so much that's happening that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it's like we can be different, but can we find a way to love one another through those differences and not be
Well,
threatened by those differences?
yeah, well, I find that music transcends
It
the human
does.
condition,
It
right?
does.
Human music, the sounds that we appreciate are appreciated across boundaries, across religions, across political whatever, concepts and constructs. Music seems to be that unifying force. If a person's, as a child, a mother will sing something to their child to calm them. And that's a sound that carries with them and develops in them as a human being. They had this base of music that came through. There's very few people on the planet that don't know music in some
Exactly.
form or another that has an impact on them in a way that's transcending the concepts that human condition is put on. Societal laws and rules and structures are there to do whatever they do to control. Music doesn't control. Music allows you to express.
Right.
And so you have a tool that transcends politics, transcends law, transcends religion, transcends history, because music has been a constant across everything. The fact that you learned classical first and then moved into that expressive form of jazz, you've gone through the stages. I mean, I'm surprised that you don't go into tribal. I know that Sting went tribal. He took tribal music and applied it in his music, and I watched one of his shows that he did in Africa and Egypt, where he
Really?
had African players and he had
Yeah.
other tribal players on his while he was playing live, because that tribal music is very core to every human being. When you listen to really good tribal music, you listen to it and your body resonates
Well,
because
guess, go ahead.
instinctive. It's an instinctive response to that kind of beat, that kind of bass level sound. It's just something that you respond to. And your music is very much like that. I find I respond immediately when I hear your voice, when I hear you playing piano, it's that kind of resonating music. So,
Thank you. Well, so I'm here at the Banff Center again working on a new project, and I was very fortunate to sit in on an open rehearsal, which really was a performance by Tanya Takak, who is I believe, an Inuk singer. She's from the north,
yeah,
and she's a throat singer.
two
And
and a
she has
half.
other throat singers with her, and oh my gosh, you want to talk about viscera and the gut and coming from a very intellectual and thoughtful process, but really also incredibly instinctual and primal.
Mhm.
And it was so visceral, I was almost uncomfortable. But she was 150% committed to who she is and what she was communicating to the audience. And it was so strong, one of the strongest things I've ever experienced. And I they had a Q&A after, and we were all just sort of shaken by the experience. And one woman said, "That was wild." And Tanya looked her in the eye and said, "Well, maybe you're tame." And, I was like, "Touche."
Hmm. Yeah.
Because, I'll tell you that as an artist and as a person, and I think it comes from that perfectionist side, the people-pleasing side that for me runs deep. I can be quite buttoned up, and I want to do what's right. What does
Mhm.
that even mean, right? And so to be around someone who's just unapologetically and full body, full voiced themselves was really powerful and so new for me that it almost felt offensive at times, but
Really?
in a good way. Do
So
you know what
was
I'm
it an
saying?
internal offense that you felt, why am I not this
No,
open, this
just
honest, this authentic, or
wow, I almost can't handle how fierce this is. I'm not sure I was ready for this depth of honesty, because that depth of honesty, that depth of honest expression and unbridled expression, when you're in the room with that, you're actually kind of forced to face everything within yourself and try to dig that deep within yourself.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I or many of those audience members were ready for that level of depth.
Well, it's introspective. You find that a
Yeah.
lot of that style of music, so throat singing and some of the
Yeah.
very core African music, brings you to a place where you are introspective in the sense of comfortable, right? That you're looking at this and you're listening, but there's something in you responding and you're going, why is that responding that way? What is
Yeah.
going on? I don't, this is not me. Why am I reacting this way? This is too much. This is so
Right.
really powerful. When in fact, what it is your body's simply responding naturally, but it's in responding in a way that you've never experienced. And
Yes.
so you look at it and go, why? This isn't me. This isn't the way I am.
Yeah.
And it almost makes so I guess the piece that I throw at you is maybe what you might want to do is close all the doors, sit down at the piano and think, how can I do that? I want to do that. I want to bring myself to that raw, honest experience with myself and just push something out without thinking anybody's listening, because all the doors are closed. I can be completely open and honest. This is going to sound horrible. I don't really care. Go. You just throw yourself into it and allow yourself that level, and then it'll free you to step back from and go, I won't perform like that, but Now I
Consistent.
understand where it comes from.
So you used the word that I was grasping for, raw. There was a rawness to it, and I don't want to be uncouth, but she had images projected in the background that her father, we learned after the fact, her father had captured, um, and they were bloody. Like it was like they were skinning animals. I
Mhm.
mean, this was part
Seals
of
and
their life.
yeah,
This was
yeah,
part of their lifestyle, and it is part of their lifestyle. And
yeah.
but there was like an intimacy and a rawness to it that we're so we edit so much in our everyday lives, right? And this was just raw.
Yeah.
And that was something profound. And I really admire her for her willingness to take us there, to go there,
Yeah.
and by virtue of going there, demanding that we go with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in essence, it was more almost a performance piece as opposed to
Yes.
just the music. So the music would have evoked something within you that you wouldn't have understood. And it would have been subtle because all you get is the sound that's causing the evocation. But with the images, you get taken to the place where she comes from. You get taken from the place where she's drawing the music from. And so you get to see her world. You become more imbued with the context because the context of a singer is key to the sound they're making. Most people don't get that. And that's why when they go, they enjoy the night and they listen to music and they applaud, wow. But if they were to go through the process, like you said, your process of creation, how you get there, what's going on in your mind, and have it some way presented that's beyond the music, the engagement with the audience changes completely. And that's, I think, what she was going for. She's going for a change of engagement where you are now not just listening, you're part. You're coming to my home. You're going to sit at my fire and you're going to play a part. You're going to have some whale blubber while you're sitting there and and
Yeah.
experience life. And that to me, I would have loved to have been at something like that simply because the power that it generates and the after effects of that would just swirl in my head because I get this a lot more. And now I'm imbued with more sense of what's going on, right? It's not just a sound, it's an entire experience. That whole throat singing is not just to express my personal feelings, but to express my lifestyle. This is me.
Totally. Yeah, and it was very sensual. Like there were multiple people, women. One was her cousin, and others were friends, and they would hold one another while throat singing, and it was so intimate. Again, I almost felt uncomfortable, but that wasn't the point. They
Mhm.
were just being themselves.
Yeah.
Throat singing, I've since learned from a few other people, it's playful, you know, and but because of my particular upbringing, to me some of what I was seeing and hearing and experiencing, I felt maybe sexual and I felt uncomfortable, but it wasn't that at all. For me, it was something so new. So yeah, as you said, it's still reverberating, and there aren't that many of us on campus right now at the Banff Center, but those of us who are and gather for meals before we go off into our separate studios to work, we've been talking about this show because everybody was rocked by it. And I should say she's bringing it to the Chan Center in Vancouver early next year. It's called Split Tooth. Split Tooth. Yeah.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. But it's just that it goes to what you were talking about with an audience not participating the way you thought. It's taking your context,
Yeah.
why you felt uncomfortable, and applying it to what you're hearing. And you shouldn't, it's almost like a no, 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 because you shouldn't apply your context to anything that you're listening to because your context is yours. What's being presented to you is someone else's context, be it music, be it singing, be it art. Looking at it and experiencing it is all you need to do. Your context is irrelevant. Throw it out the window. So had you sat and non-contextualized the piece and just watched, you'd
Mm.
have been overwhelmed. Wave upon wave of strange emotional reaction and things. As long as you kept yourself at bay, it would have been an experience that you would have gone, wow. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted by the experience, but it has no context to me. It just was an experience. By imposing context onto it, you're going, oh, okay, I feel a little embarrassed. It feels a little sexual. It feels a little, and that's all your context imposed on something that, as you pointed out, I found out later, it's playful. It's
Yeah,
just fun. It's
totally. And I thought it was interesting that so somebody next to me who's also a jazz musician, we were unpacking the experience a bit afterwards, and he said, I wish they'd done the Q&A first. And I thought, well, but I think it was more impactful not to have preconceived notions, right?
exactly.
When Leonard Cohen was interviewed and people couldn't resist asking him to define his lyrics because some of them were so abstract. And so they'd say, "Hey Lenny, what did you mean when you said, you know, show me the place where you want your slave to go?" The troubles came, um, the troubles came. I'm trying to remember the next lyric. Just these, they feel like they mean something, but they might mean another. And so we would
Mhm.
look to him to unpack the meaning for us, and he would refuse to define them because he
Of
felt he
course.
was he felt he was taking something away from the listener if he did so. He said,
Exactly.
"I I don't want to superimpose my context on
Well, in
your
his,
experience."
yeah, in his lyrics, the way he presented them, it was so that you could, much like performance art, it is experiential. You bring your context and you see something and it changes your perspective. You're going, whoa, what's going on? His words did the same thing. You applied your context and they didn't make sense, so you went, wait, is there something else here? And it allows you to sort of open up to things. If he imposed, this is what I meant. Well, now you've got a guidebook, and that's all you have is one way of looking at the song. And that's the thing about his music is that he didn't want you to see it one way. If you're in a bad mood, this is how it felt. If you were in a
Yeah,
really good mood, this is how it felt because you applied a layer of your own personal context in terms of your emotional state, in terms of what you were remembering at the time, that made the music different every time you listened to it. And that was his methodology. With the throat singers, I think for them, if you had listened to an explanation of what they were doing ahead of time and then you listened to it, you'd have shut off your ears and
right,
simply said, "Oh, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing
right.
this." Whereas you got to feel it raw. You were embarrassed. You were kind of shying away from it, going, "Whoa, this is overwhelming. This is like wave upon wave upon wave of things I have never experienced before in my life." And yet you had, because emotionally you were kind of connecting to certain aspects of it, going, "Am I allowed to be here?"
Right. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you should do that more with yourself. There's an experiment for you. There's something that you should do is
Yeah.
lock yourself in a room and try that on your own. Walk away from your fear or bring them to the table and say, these are the things that I'm really uncomfortable with. Now I'm going to express them in music.
Hmm. Totally.
And see if anybody, and if you want, if you feel comfortable enough to tape it and let somebody listen to it and see what their context of it is, ask them.
Right.
Somebody that you trust enough that
Yeah.
isn't just going to go, yeah, it's this, but gives you an interpretation. And then you listen to their interpretation, and go, that is not where it came from. Wow.
Right. Right.
It would be an interesting experiment. I wish I had the skill set that you did to be able to do that kind of thing because,
Well, you do in your own way, and that's the thing. That's where, like, we're all art makers, and we all express ourselves, right? And if we can tap into that freedom of expression and allow others their freedom of expression, you know, um, and I want to add the caveat, like within reason, I guess, right? You don't want to hurt anyone else.
exactly.
Offending might be okay, but you don't want to cause anyone actual harm. So, you know, but if we could allow ourselves and one another to be more free, I mean, the world would become a lot more interesting for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you on that. I think
Yeah.
there have to be parameters put around that
Yeah.
because, as you pointed out, the world is a very interesting place and allowing Everyone to be free? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, this becomes a very big and I mean, this is what we're hearing. I'm a huge podcast junkie. I love podcasts, and I listen to the New York Times Daily and a lot of the CBC podcasts and to other thinkers. And this is the debate, right? It's around free speech, and it's what's
Mm,
happening in the States and elsewhere, you know.
yeah.
And um, yeah, so we'll save that conversation for another day.
Well,
But
I mean,
I'm glad we went there. We brushed up against it.
yeah, but I mean, we're talking free speech and music. And I mean, as long as
Yeah.
there's no words in the music that evoke, although, you have to admit, there are words in music that evoke in yourself something that is not what the music was trying to do. Like, take a look at Leonard Cohen. He
Yeah.
used words that allow you to impose different realities upon it. Now, of course, there is hateful speech, if you want to call it that, that
Right,
maybe
right.
shouldn't be expressed from platforms of people that can get to millions of people because it has impact. But music doesn't have context.
Yeah.
Music is sound. And so really evocative music, like throat singing, like any other kind of music that is challenging to the brain, allow that. Why not allow it? Because it makes your brain expand. Or, I mean, if you want to shut it off, then, be closed-minded. That's up to you. But it's a choice.
Mhm.
And music doesn't really evoke anything that makes, I mean, yes, it does. It can evoke the heart going, yay! You
Yeah.
look at all the songs that were played during revolutions and during wars. They played music that made people want to go, yes, I'm part of this team and I'm going.
Right. Right.
That kind of challenge and bump up is a good thing as long as it's not imposed on something that's a bad thing and saying, see, we're going to do bad things with this really great music. No, let's just do the music and not worry about all the rest of that stuff. And
Right.
speaking of great music, we're now going to get into it because from your album Winter Songs, here is one of my absolute favorites. And listen for it because she does something that sounds like an instrument is playing, and it is with her voice. Rocky Mountain Lullaby. Enjoy.
The mountainside in morning light casts a marigold hue, sparkling sun. Rocky lullaby sings the sunrise. A cozy wooden cottage house sits atop of the hill, covered in snow. There's a flickering light in the window. Silhouettes dance across the wall. steeped in lavender hues, glistening. It's time for sleep. It's time for sleep. So off to sleep we go.
All right, so we are back. You have tour dates. We missed the ones in December, but you have tour dates coming up. Might as well talk about them right now. January 15th, you're in Fort Myers, Florida. 16th, you're in Tampa. The 17th, you're in Miami. So all the snowbirds from here in Canada, go watch Laila, because she's phenomenal. She will make your heart sing when you listen to her. I'm not sure if you're going to be doing singing or piano. So if you're just doing piano, that's my fault.
Both.
In March, you're going to be in Calgary, March 13th. March 14th, you're in Vernon, BC. March 18th, you're in Bellingham, Washington. So you're bouncing the border and you're going over to Washington afterwards. Hopefully there won't be any snow, because that wouldn't be a trip I'd want to take. And then March 21st, you're in Port Moody, BC. So you're back in Canada. Yay. Good for you. Canadian content spread around the world. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else coming up that we need to know about? So you released Wintersongs. What's the next one? Do we have a secret hit? Is there something new coming up in the next year, half year?
Well, I don't know when this is going to broadcast or air, but
Next
I am
week.
actually okay, beautiful. So I will have at that point released a deluxe version of Wintersongs,
Okay.
where we'll have bundled in an extended version of Joy to the World that is already out there, but then also a new mix of an older song that used to be called Four Sundays to Christmas, and it's coming out as Can't Wait for Christmas. So that is actually a more overtly seasonal song, but we're really proud of it. It features Natalie McMaster on fiddle.
Oh, fantastic.
And and then in the new year, I haven't yet put this on my calendar, but we'll be in Aspen, performing in Aspen, I
Wow.
believe on the 28th, the day after Emily Claire Barlow. So it's a weekend of Canadian singers doing, Canadian music, and especially me, because my project will be Dreamland, Joni Mitchell and the Canadian Songbook Reimagined. And that's what I'm working on here at the Banff Center. I'm working on songs by Anne Murray, Gord Lightfoot, Kaylee Cardinal, Jeremy Dutcher, William Prince, Daniel Caesar, the list goes on. So that'll be the next big installment. We're going to be touring that project quite extensively, a little bit in the fall of 2026, but then really going after it, going across the country to soft seat theaters and listening rooms in 2027, including Kerner Hall in Toronto, and probably back at the National Arts Center, I think.
I was gonna
I
ask,
love that
when are you going
place.
back?
And people can go to my website to find that information, or my Facebook artist page, Laila Biali Music, or Instagram. I'm always updating things accordingly. And if you have listeners in California, we'll be in Mendocino in July next year with the Joni Mitchell Project. We'll be in Elora, Ontario, also in July. And so the dates keep coming in, and we'll keep adding
Fantastic.
them to my website.
Are you planning to go international? Have you got another trip to Japan planned?
It's interesting. I parted ways with my European and Asian agent, meaning that she was handling Europe and Asia. And I went to a huge jazz conference called Jazz Ahead last year and got interest from several international booking agents. But at that time, it was this past spring, I was in such a fragile place with my health and with my son, like just family, that I had to step back and felt that I couldn't make any big commitments when I was not ready
Of
to
course.
be booking big tours. But now I'm ready. And so, God willing, I'll re-engage with one of those agents and launch back out into the rest of the world. So Europe, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to tour Europe. I miss Japan. I haven't been back to Japan in more than 10 years.
Well, we have listeners in Japan. We have quite a contingent of listeners in Japan, jazz
Well,
listeners.
and you
So
know what's interesting? My largest streaming listenership is in Japan.
oh, fantastic.
So, so I would love to come back to Japan. I'd also love to go to South Korea and other parts of Asia. So, I need to be home more often than not these days as my son finishes up high school and we just want him to have all the support he needs.
Mhm.
But then I'm hoping that I can venture out and tour here and there. And once he's graduated in 2028, it's not like suddenly I will no longer be a mom. I'm still going to have to be present and parenting, but I think there'll be
Freebird.
a little more freedom, a little more freedom. Yeah.
Well, maybe he can come with you to Japan because he'll be out of school, take a year off, take a leap
Well,
year.
we've been bringing him along as much as we can. So he'll come with us to Mendocino because it's in the summer and we'll drive up through the redwood forest and
Oh,
it's going to be
fantastic. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done the road trip myself, so I know that road is beautiful, beautiful. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Lila, it's an absolute pleasure to have been speaking with you. I know the husband is waiting for you as well, so I will let you go. And it's fantastic to know what's coming up. I'm looking forward to all of it. I will be listening for all of it. I am hoping for, in my hopes of hopes, that you will do one of those acoustic albums where it's more your voice than anything else because your voice
Okay.
is phenomenal. And I want
Noted.
to hear
Thank
more of it.
you.
Thank you very, very much.
Oh, such a treat, Stefan. I look forward to the next time.
Oh, absolutely. Next album, we'll do another interview. All
Awesome. Thank you.
right. Thank you very much. Bye for now.